friends. Welcome to episode 258 of School Librarians United. I am your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian in my 17th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast has something for you. One of my goals in 2024 is to create a variety of opportunities to showcase as many voices and experiences of school librarians as possible on the podcast platform. This January, I asked listeners to send in their voicemails of Hills I'll Die On. This compilation will be posted on Friday, February 9th. February's prompt is Purchases I Regret. I hope you'll consider sending your voice message to my email, schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. Details can be found in the link in the show notes. Before we get started, I did want to remember to always invite our instructors to consider including podcast episodes in the activities planned with your students. By day, my friend Andrea Trudeau is a middle school librarian in the northern suburbs of Chicago. She also happens to teach undergraduate and graduate courses in the library media program at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. She has selected episodes of the podcast to include in both the courses she teaches. Andrea said, quote, I love diversifying the media my students consume. Higher ed loves to focus heavily on just reading. I am mixing it up here. So thank you for creating such an incredible podcast, chock full of incredible content, end quote. Friends, I couldn't agree more. When you consider just how authentic our conversations between school librarians can be, just remember that these podcasts are always free to share. I've included also a link to the playlists, so anybody can search the podcast by theme and topic and by age group. And while we're on the topic of school librarian podcasts, be sure to listen to Lauren Mobley's Library Unlocked podcast and Steve Tatro's School Librarian Learning Network podcast. And I've made sure to include links to both of these podcasts in today's show notes. Last week, I told you about the pre-sale of Amanda Jones's upcoming book, That Librarian. It won't be available until August 27th, but you can order your copy now. And if you use the indie bookseller, Cavalier House Books, in Amanda's hometown of Denham Springs, Louisiana, you will get a signed copy. I've included a link in the show notes. When you look at the cover of Amanda's book, you might recognize the Freedom Fighter shirt that she's wearing. She reached out to the designer, Christy, who then designed a line of That Librarian apparel as well as That Librarian flair, such as a bag, sticker, and mug. I love that we can all be that librarian who advocates for our library and our students' access to books. You will find a link in the show notes as well. Keep in mind that 15% of the proceeds goes to the Texas Library Association, as that is the home state of the designer. Friends, I welcome you and all listeners to reach out with your feedback and episode suggestions. You can find me either on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle is at LMS_United. On Threads, you can find me at School Librarians United, and on Blue Sky at SLU Podcast, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Be sure to listen to episode 224. I announce a sponsorship with Literati Book Fairs. And now a chance to hear from one of Literati Book Fair veterans, Caroline Carr. Caroline Carr, welcome back to the podcast.
Good to be here.
So curious because, I'm always stressing about making some money from the book fair, because the reality is it isn't a necessity for most of us. It's something that we do to supplement, and sometimes it's a considerable amount of our budget. When it comes to redeeming your profits with Literati, tell us a little bit about your experience and what's worked best for you.
Honestly, that's one of the reasons why I switched to Literati, because they partner with Follett. And so Follett, as you know, has pretty sturdy books, and they come pre-processed. So it just saves me time. I can choose the pre-processed select option And you get more money if you choose a credit instead of cash. And before I never would. I'd always choose cash because I didn't want the kind of flimsy books. But with Follett, I totally can. And I do. So I make my dollar stretch as far as possible.
Is your card catalog linked with Follett? So
it is. Yeah.
So for me, the added bonus is that it's almost like you can skip that step of having to check and see if you actually have the book or,
Exactly.
Because everybody's on the same page when it comes to do we already have these books? And you obviously have your processing preferences already on file. So It just, work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right.
And Literati for life.
Literati for life.
Carolyn Carr, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Very welcome.
Friends, be sure to tune in to learn all about Literati and their very generous offer. Librarian to book their very first Literati Book Fair and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify to receive a $500 gift card to Titlewave. Visit the link in today's show notes and call the Literati team to see if you qualify. And now a word from our sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for skill libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I'm so excited to be working with them. I'm also grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 6. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for our episode, Emotional Support Librarian, and my conversation with Diana Haneski. Diana Haneski, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Amy. I'm glad to be here today with you.
First, I'd like to congratulate you on being one of 3 school librarians to have received the I Love My Librarian Award this year.
Thank you. It feels so good. It really, really is an honor. I've always loved that award. I mean, don't you love the name of it? Love your librarian, love your library. So yeah, I feel really good about it.
Without getting too nosy, are you heading out to Baltimore in a couple days?
Oh, yes. I'm packing for the cold weather.
Oh, well, friends, some of us are lucky to live in the warm climate. And yes, unfortunately, you're going to have to find a coat somewhere in your place. Because, friend, ALA's LibLearnX conference is being held this year in Baltimore. It is ALA's mid-year. Can I ask, Diana, have you ever been to this conference, the LibLearnX or the mid-year?
I have not been to the mid-year. I've been to AASL for the first time this year.
Of course.
And I've been to the ALA conference in the summer a couple of times, Washington and New Orleans, but I have not been to this one. I'm excited about it.
One of the nice things that you receive when you are a recipient of the I Love My Librarian Award is that you get free registration to the mid-year LibLearnX, and this year it's in Baltimore. You also get a lovely honorarium as well, and you also get a travel stipend. So you really have no excuse not to go.
It's very generous. I was floored. I had no idea it came with all that. This is how I knew I was nominated. My clerk handed me a folder, a packet, and said, "We just submitted this for you."
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, and then I don't know how many weeks later, they called me in my office. The former president of ALA called me. So it was a good thing they gave me the heads up, because I would have been like, what? And then she started telling me all the things that came, and I'm like, oh, I was floored. It's great. I'm excited about the conference. I want to see snow. That was one of my wishes, because, we live here in the eternal summer,
Yes.
And it was actually during COVID, that was my wish, that I wanted to see all 4 seasons.
Oh,
because I'm originally from Connecticut and I missed the Four Seasons. So because of this conference, I'm going to get to see winter and hopefully a little snow maybe.
there you go. Well, and you are rather tan. I've not seen anybody with this kind. Such a healthy glow, friends. Such a healthy glow. Those of us in the states that celebrate snow and really ridiculously cold weather right now look rather pasty and not much color going on here. So no, friends, Diana's in Florida, and that's going to become even more readily apparent as we move in through this conversation. Friends, there are so many things that we could discuss with Diana today. Diana is a National Board Certified Teacher Librarian. She is also a Microsoft Innovative Educator and a Book Club and Battle of the Books facilitator. She is a Makerspace Club advisor, as well as the Read Squad coordinator. But first and foremost, you are the librarian at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Friends, right now, if you are hearing the name of the school and it is not ringing a bell, I'm going to ask you to pause. I'm going to ask you to look up the name of the school so that you can have some context for the conversation that I'm having with Diana. And she's been incredibly generous in agreeing to have this conversation with us. So we'll pause right here, and I hope you join us in a few minutes. We are very, very fortunate to be able to have this conversation with Diana. And I have been very grateful to have been afforded this opportunity. Diana and I have had a little bit of a talk, and I've made sure that all the questions that we're going to discuss today, Diana's already had a chance to take a look at. And we're only going to go wherever Diana is comfortable when it comes to discussing her experiences, because she is the survivor of a mass shooting.
When you put it that way, oof, I'm going to be honest, my hands are sweaty. This is just what happens to the body. The body remembers everything. So because of what I went through on that horrible day in 2018, February 14th, I've learned a lot. I've learned how to manage those feelings. I've learned how to help others as well. I didn't know any of this before. I knew little bits and pieces. But that day, people say you'll never be the same. Of course, how could you be after something like that? I had warning of as far as what to do with an incident like this, because this is really hard to believe. My dear friend Yvonne Check, the media specialist at Sandy Hook, gave me a lot of information that was really important to know if something like that should ever happen. Not dreaming that it ever would. But I have to say, after hearing her story, I came back to the library and I was telling my clerk, I have to dress differently. I have to wear pockets because I always have to have my keys. I need my radio. I need my phone. It all has to be on me. Because if you don't have that when you need it, and that was it. We talked about what she did, and her information helped me that day. And that's why I talk to people about it. That's why I'm able, because I think it's important to talk about getting us ready, getting the kids ready. People say to us, how could you go through those drills? It brings you, because it does, it brings me right back to the room I was in. I was in, an equipment room, rather large, with lots of stuff in there. And there was 55 of us in that room. Yeah. It was mostly kids and a few adults. And, but because of the information I got from Yvonne, I knew to, move things in front of the door. My clerk was amazing. She wasn't afraid. She just, I kept telling her, get away from the door, because we didn't know where the shooter was. We knew it was on campus because I had that radio. So, the light that you see that's between the floor and the bottom of the door, my eyes were just like fixed there because I was looking if there was a body walking by, And so basically I was in a frozen state, Amy. They say fight or flight. I became frozen because we were in there for, a couple of hours or more. And so after that, to get back to life, it took a while and it took help from others. The friend that I mentioned, Iman Chek, and her daughter, Ashley Chek, who now works for Everytown for gun safety, they both got on a plane and came to see me and told me that I had to practice self-care. So that was the first time I started hearing about that. And that's exactly what got me through this, to take care of myself. And then the people from the Center for Mind Body Medicine, they came to see us. At that point, it was months later, and I was like, oh, not one more thing. I don't know if I could do one more thing, because people were trying to help us, but I still didn't feel good. Like right away, I didn't want to eat. It didn't feel like myself. I couldn't even read, Amy. I couldn't read. Like, my brain couldn't focus, and I read all the time, but I couldn't. So that was interesting. But then once the Center for Mind Body people came, and that was like May, I was like, I'm going to stay in my office. They're using the library. They're going to do this thing for the staff. But then as they were coming in and talking to them and meeting them, I'm like, oh, they seem like they're pretty with it. And maybe this is interesting. So I started off in my office, and then I crept out and I listened to Dr. Jim Gordon, who told us how we could be helped by a breath. And he modeled it, and he did breathing exercises. And then he got us shaking and dancing movement. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh my goodness, I shook something out of me. I shook something I didn't need in me out. And that's the day that I started feeling better. My body felt better. So these are some of the things that I learned that now I help others with, because now I'm certified with them. I'm a facilitator. I help kids and teachers, and we do skills groups where it starts with a breath, really. I mean, try it.
Diana, can I ask, just because I want to appreciate some of the things that listeners might be wondering, and friends, if you haven't Googled this, there was a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School on February 14th, Valentine's Day of 2018. 14 students were killed. 3 staff members were killed. And another 17 individuals were injured at this absolute tragic day. When you're talking about being back in school, I don't know how I would have responded, but it would be very hard for me to even fathom going back into a space after something like this had happened. I'm about 30 minutes away from Oxford High School, and Michigan State is 2 hours away. So unfortunately, there are some firsthand examples of things that have happened in my own state. I guess what I would like to know, because you touched upon this idea of being trained, educators, especially in the United States, have all become accustomed to active shooter training. And actually, it happens with all of our students. Our students have these trainings. We have these trainings. I know that when my kids went to college, they had these trainings as well. They have these trainings at workplaces now. We've all imagined what we would do in those set of circumstances. And we've sort of tried to play this out. What would we do in the worst of all possible scenarios? I think what you're describing is the worst of all possible scenarios. Would you mind giving us an idea of prior to this happening, the before times? Could you tell us what had you thought through prior to this day? And could you started to talk a little bit about like the events in real time, how different that was from what you had been trained to do.
Before, we had drills and we were trained, but not much, and it's hard to even remember. Everything came after. I feel good about the fact that more people are learning what to do. And it's so unfortunate that there's so many. Like, look at us. We're talking about all these shootings that have happened this year. It's horrible. It's just horrible. We were hoping that, never again and there'd be a change. And now it's just getting more and more. It's just terrible. So, if you want me to answer being prepared for something horrible to happen before the shooting in my school, I had that preparation from Yvonne, that information was the most. They were just starting to get us trained and prepared for this sort of thing, but it was not enough, everything has come after for most of us. And it's good because, we just had a drill the other day, and I say to the kids, look at your surroundings, see what's in front of you that you might have to shove in front of someone. Like, I never knew that before. You know what I mean? So that kind of thing. There's a lot that came after, Amy. I mean, like right now as I'm talking to you, I have like a pink stone. It's in the shape of a heart, and I'm just like holding on to it as I'm talking to you. And it's like a fidget thing, like the kids have fidget spinners and that sort of thing. Before you'd be like, oh, what do they need that for? Now I'm like so understanding, like they need it. Let them play with it. It doesn't bother me. It's going to help them focus and let them learn. So, that's the kind of thing I'm trying to help others with. I'm trying to help, teachers and kids. And that's what I mean about, like, I thought I was an understanding person before, but now I'm really understanding. I pay attention to all these things. And I try to teach everyone around me, all my loves, everybody, to recognize the signs. Like I told you before, my hands were sweating. Now they're not. I started talking and breathing. I'm playing with this thing. I put vanilla, actually it was lavender oil on me, and I put it here so that I could take a whiff of it. These are all little things that I have to do now. They're just part of my life. So, I give them to people when I meet somebody, if they want it. Everything came after, really.
Something that I was very aware of is the training that I had in the I want to say early days. I've been an educator since 1992, and I was most definitely an educator during Columbine and everything moving forward from there. Really, that was sort of, for me, the first time I remember realizing this is something that we're going to now have to train for. And for many of us, the training has now gone from running and hiding to run, hide, fight. And I know that's what they're training now in the workplace, and I know that's what they're teaching in college, and that's what they're teaching in my school. And so it really has tried to change some of the conversation into what can we do, not just to protect ourselves, but to make sure that we recognize some of the advantages that we have being in our spaces. And I have to ask, you said you had 55 people in a row. Did you gather them up from the hallways? I'm trying to, I don't want to dwell, but if you had 55 people in a room, you must have at some point been making sure that anybody who was in the halls had a place to go.
Yes, luckily I had a clerk, and she was at one door and I was at another door. So we were different hallways. So she brought them in from her end and brought them into the closet. And then I was in another hallway where there were teachers' classrooms. And so I was grabbing them from in there, come this way. Because the fire drill went off. So people were trying to evacuate. It was terrible. It was crazy. And so, and I had the radio, so I knew that we had to bring people in. And so that's what I did. And then, I brought them into the teacher that was nearby, and then to me, because that door led to a studio teacher. And that's what we did. So that's how we ended up with that many in the back room.
Well, and you also, when that door eventually gets opened, that is something which requires training, because you don't just open the door.
Right. And that's what I learned from Yvonne Check. She was like, she wouldn't open the door. They had to call a certain number because she wasn't going to just let them in. And so, of course, I remembered that. And I talked to the SWAT officer when he came in, and, I was like making sure it was real, and it sure was real, but yeah, all these things that, like I'm saying, everything came after. Yeah, we learned a little bit before, but really the most important things happened after this shooting. And it's such a horrible club to be part of. You know what I'm saying? And all I could tell you now is I try to be inspired by those children and loved ones that lost their lives. And that's how I move forward, and I try to make things better.
I want to make sure that we focus on your healing and all the amazing things that you have done to make sure that your entire school benefits from the actions that you have taken to bring yourself to a place where you and I can be having this conversation today. And it sounds like you went back to school within a short while. Can you give us, just because I have no idea, was there a time where you were not in the building? Because it sounds like when you were with people, it was helpful. But I imagine that first time would have been very, very a struggle.
It's hard to remember exactly the time, how many days we weren't at school. But my initial reaction when this happened was, how could I ever go back there? How could I go to work again? Like, that's how I felt. And then as I was talking to an employee, we started talking about the kids who were really fighting and speaking and trying really hard to make it, never happen again. I said, what, if they could do that, I have to go back. So that's basically how I snapped out of that feeling and went back to school. And then shortly after, it became, the library was like a wellness center. There was psychologists, people volunteered from all over, and that's what happened in the library. And then there was dogs everywhere, because there's organizations throughout the country that, they come and they help, and they helped us. And to see the kids and the parent and the the whole community, really, the students, the teachers were really helped by the dogs. And I made sure that my principal and the superintendent knew that I welcomed the dogs in the library. So you'd come to the library and you'd see dogs and feel better. There was bean bags. There was all sorts of things. People started sending us from around the country, to help us, just try to feel better. So that was the thing. At first you feel like, how can I even have a good day again? How can I move forward? This horror happened. there's families who are beside themselves. How can I be positive and move forward? And as the days go by, you realize we have to keep living. And so it's taken me a while, because now it's going to be 6 years, right, next month. So it's taken a while. I wasn't like this then. It took some training. And now I know that that's my goal is to find joy, seek joy, because life is ups and downs. Life is a roller coaster. We have good days, we have bad days. There's kids coming to school with trauma for all sorts of reasons, lots of reasons why they come to school and need help. So basically, I learned basic things like breathing and mindfulness. And I see it more and more and more everywhere. People need it.
You mentioned, and I've been very fortunate. We've had therapy dogs in my Learning Commons. I know that the library or Learning Commons Media Center has always been the central space for services when you have to do them on a large scale. So you've got your support teams in there, your crisis response teams are in there when we've had losses of students and so forth, and having the dogs. But you went one step further, and you decided to get your own therapy dog that you could bring to school. And I want to hear a little bit about this, because I know selfishly that there are listeners who would love, irrespective of their circumstances, the idea of the librarian with a therapy dog in tow sounds like a match made in heaven.
It is. And I tell you, there's a nice story behind this. What happened was the community, a couple of people in the community, professionals, they were Bernedoodle owners, and they contacted Utah Bernedoodles, and they told them what happened, and they were hoping that they could get a dog to us. And so they contacted our school, and then the administration came to me because they knew I welcomed the dogs, and they said, would you like to be the mother of this pup so that you could bring the dog to school every day? And I was like, oh my goodness, I want to say yes, but I got to check with my husband. And so, of course, my husband was like, yes. And so Ray and we help a lot of people with this now because we see the benefit of it. So basically, River was a gift, and she just continues to be a gift. All these years later, we knew it immediately when they put her in my arms that this dog was special. And she's been coming to school every day. She's a hardworking therapy dog.
I was going to say, can I ask, how old was River when she joined your family? Because do you get them at 6 weeks old? And you mentioned a breed, but I don't recognize it. What kind of dog is River?
River is a mini Bernedoodle, and she is part poodle, mini poodle, and part Bernese Mountain Dog. That's, yeah, it's a beautiful combination. And she's just got the personality for this. She helps. You could be happy just looking at her. She's sleeping at my feet right now. And
I know we were exchanging pictures of our dogs. And my dog is a part Sheba, part Satan, and would not be invited in with company. But you have a dog that gets to go to work with you every single day.
Every day. River is all love. And there are kids and teachers who look for her every day. Like I just got over being ill and having an accident. I was absent some days, and everyone was like, "Where's River? How dare you?"
I was going to say, it's a little. They could probably find coverage for your job, but they probably can't find coverage for River.
Well, she actually also does other volunteer work. So for people that are interested in thinking about getting a dog, there are organizations out there that would probably love to come to your school so you can see if it's something that you'd like. River volunteers with CAT, Canine Assisted Therapy, and that's a local organization. And, there's teams of dogs, and it's a beautiful thing.
Now, forgive me. I mean, you have a place where people can find you. I don't know if it's a circulation desk. Where is River found in your library? Do you have a desk for River? Or River has a little place where they? Yeah, I'm trying to get a visual for this.
Well, picture a sassy dog who wants to run the show and wants to be everywhere. So, because now she's been there for 6 years, so she's changed. When she was a puppy, she was sleeping. Oh, you asked me how old she was. She came to us at 3 months old. So yeah, she was born in April after the shootings, and at 2 months she went to a month of training. So she came to us at 3 months old. She had a lot of training, and she grew up at the school, and so she a lot of times will be at the door at class change, so kids can pet her as they go to class, so they get to see her like that. Sometimes she's just sitting there at the door waiting for somebody, and if they start petting her, she'll just get in a position like, okay, rub my belly. So she's got a bed under my desk. She's got a crate that she likes to go into, a kennel type of thing, and it's in my office as well. So she's got all the comforts. We got a gift of, the buzzers that you hit. You've probably seen them on social media where you push it and it says a word so the dog can communicate. We have that as well. She pushes it for food. So yeah, she's everywhere.
That's wonderful. Well, when we've had therapy dogs in My Learning Commons, the dogs would be with the students for about 45 minutes, and then their person would take them for a 15-minute break. And I said, is that their contract? And I sort of jokingly said that, but even the dogs can get overwhelmed.
Oh, for sure. I'm so glad you brought that up, because we were really working her. But I understand more about how she does need a break. So sometimes when she's sleeping, like a hard sleep, and somebody comes around, I'll say she'll be up in a little while. She's resting, because she does need that rest. She feels everything, and she's been known to go to the person that needs her help. Lots of amazing stories, yeah, where you could see it, like she's going to the right person that needs her.
Well, and friends, I have been so fortunate to benefit from canine care throughout different times of my life, mostly notably when I was working with my own mother in her advanced stages of Alzheimer's. And when you realize that the dog, and in this case, we had our dog, but also when we traveled, the airport, the airport in Arizona, Skyline, what was it called? The Skyline International in Phoenix, Arizona, has therapy dogs, volunteers walking up and down their terminals with dogs. And I was so grateful, because my mother, who was terribly confused and tired, and also when she was in the hospital, there were therapy dogs that came in to certain units in the hospital and jumped right on her bed and talked with her. But I mean, the therapy dogs have made a difference in my life and in the quality of my mother's life in her final years. And when I think about, you said that River also has a side hustle, also works on the weekends, works after school.
Well, like in the summers, when we're not at the school, there's more time. But she's recently part of the Hope organization, and that's an organization that gets called upon when there's a trauma. And you get deployed and we work in the southern part of the country. That is also an amazing opportunity to help people in time of just terrible things that could happen. And it's magic. It's like magic to see these dogs helping the people. And I also have a similar story with my mom. When she was dying, it was the joy to see River. She just was happy to, have her arm outside of the bed and do like a little twirl with a cookie, and River would do like a little dance, and it was just very joyful. And it was lovely that my mom, got to enjoy that before she passed.
My mother couldn't string words together. My mother really lost the ability to communicate in the last year of her life, but dogs don't care. They absolutely don't care. They're perfectly happy just being with you. And I have these fantastic pictures of my dog with my mom. And it was just, this peace that washed over her face. It was, I'm getting emotional, friends. I'd love to talk a little bit. You mentioned a little earlier on that you were introduced to this idea of mind-body medicine, and that you are certified now in mind-body medicine, and that is something that has also translated into your space. Could you give us an idea of some of the things that you learned in the certificate program? Because I'm sure that there are people listening who would connect with this information in a way that really could help them. We might include a link in the show notes if there's something that you feel would be helpful. But how did you feel this training in mind-body medicine translates into what you do in your space?
Again, when I started this, I did it for the kids because they came around and I said, I better do that. So they offered like workshops, I better do that because that's going to help the kids. And then what I find out is it helps me. Okay. So I'm helping the kids, but I'm also helping myself. So as far as being certified, I attended week-long trainings. I was an intern when they went to other areas and had other skills groups. I had to write. It was pretty involved, but it was so worth it because now I can help. You could ask me to do a breathing, guided imagery, and I could take care of that on the spot. And it is a wonderful opportunity to see, like, when you see someone struggling, right? It's like, take a minute, let's take a breath. You're going to feel better with just a few breaths, But what happened at my school is I had this area that was a room that was full of junk, basically. And I have to share the story for anyone that's, in this situation where they want to turn some area into something better, like, do it. I had to keep pushing because, we had some things in our way, the shootings and then COVID. So it took me a while. So because I kept trying and I kept asking people for help, we turned a room that was full of equipment that wasn't really being used. We turned it into like a Zen den, a Zen space. So my clerk painted it. We put beautiful things up on the walls. It's got new rug because the whole library has a new rug in there now. I wrote a few grants to get, there's like recliner chairs in it. There's yoga pillows. I have all sorts of manipulatives, and it's just a really lovely space that we encourage the kids to use for quiet, just so that they can have time on their own. But we also do skills groups in there. So the Mind Body Club, they will be in their meeting in there, and they'll do the breathing activities. They'll do the different skills that end up helping. There's a variety of them, guided imagery, mindful walking, mindful eating, there's a lot to it. And it's just a wonderful thing to see these kids because they're young adults. And I think about this, Amy. I think I'm helping them now, and they're going to help themselves and others when whatever they're doing after high school. It's been a beautiful thing. So I recommend looking into, like, the Center for Mind Body Medicine helped me, but so did Onsite in Tennessee. And there are so many applications now. We could put that in your notes as well. There's a lot of apps that teachers can easily use in their classroom. Inner Explorer is another one. Well,
and we'll put those links in the show notes. I love the fact that in order for you to be available to support your students, you had to take care of yourself. And in taking care of yourself, you learned skills which translated into things that you can then offer in your library to all of your students. And also by creating a club, you create that invitation for students to be able to participate in the things that are being offered on a regular basis. This Zen room, I love that. I think what is so affirming is to hear how you have recognized that what you have done after and the value that you have brought to your students. It's amazing.
I don't know how I could keep working if I didn't have these skills. I don't know how I could keep working if I didn't have River to go to school with me every day. Honestly, these things are really, really important now. And those kids that are in the club, they go on and they help others. And also we have peer counselor students who get this training as well. And then they go to the classrooms and they do a presentation for the students during the study halls, and they get these skills there. So it's a ripple effect. It's not just whoever's in my club. We try to spread it.
I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with peer counselors.
Oh,
this sounds fascinating.
Yes, it's students who help each other. They help in classrooms. They do peer mentorship as well. They're all around kids.
Broward County organizes an annual district-wide day of service which honors the students and the staff who were killed. And this Valentine's Day marks the 6th anniversary of that shooting. As the librarian and as somebody in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, what are some things that are important to you when it comes to this district-wide day of service? What are some things that you're going to do to honor and celebrate?
I really look forward to this day because we do good things throughout the campus. There's quite a few things that our students can choose to participate in. And what I do is the work with my clubs. So the clubs are going to get together and we're going to have a mindful morning. And we'll invite a doctor from the community. We'll do Tai Chi. Last year they did Dance Revolution, which was a movement that was so much fun. And then the Makerspace kids and the book club kids, they're going to be creating of things to give, like the Linus Project. They make blankets and then they're mailed off. So they're going to make bookmarks and they're going to create. And it's all going to be for a good deed. They're going to write letters to Rose. That's another organization where you could write a letter and then it's going to go off to somebody in a nursing home. So our Mind Body kids are going to do that. So that's just what's happening in our library media center. It's going to be a mindful morning. And then there's other things. We honor the first responders there. And then at the time, like after 10 in the morning, then we gather and we have a moment of silence, and then we honor and recognize the students and the faculty who are gone, and we remember them and honor them, and it's very emotional. It's important though. It's really, really important to be there and to honor them, and that's what the day is. And then our district encourages the other schools to participate in a day of service. So it's another example, Amy, of good that's come from the horror, just like River, just like the mindfulness. What I wanted to say before was we can't teach these kids if they're stressed, if they have anxiety. So it's really important to teach them how to reduce their anxiety and recognize when they're starting to feel bad and what they could do to feel better so they can move forward with their life and their schoolwork. We want them to read, right? We want them to read all those books that I'm getting. And I couldn't read. I told you that, right? And it happened to me again. It's something with the brain. I mean, it's all connected. The mind, the body, it's all connected.
Diana, I have to imagine your student service center, your social workers, your counselors, your school psychologists, they see you probably as a vital resource for them. I know that we have an amazing team in my school, but the library's in the middle of the school, and the librarian gets to see all the students, whether they think they need us or not, right? I imagine you work with a lot of students who might not sense that they need to go see the school psychologist or the school therapist or the social workers or counselors, but talking to you and visiting with River is healing in a very important way, because it's help that's there when they need it.
Yeah, we have things around the library like, a table with a puzzle on it, or the coloring pages, so that maybe they could start opening up as they're coloring or doing a puzzle with you. There are lots of examples of that. And, sometimes it starts with me in the library, and then it'll end up at, going where they're going to get some help from a counselor. And sometimes it's the other way around, where the counselor says, can they come up to the library? Or sometimes I just see them in the hall when they're petting River and they're having a hard time. And that's happened quite a few times where, they got to take a moment and maybe be a little late for class because they need a little help.
Something that I'm hearing is these solutions involve human interaction. When you talk about helping your students, doesn't involve, their phones. It doesn't involve Instagram. It doesn't involve TikTok. It doesn't involve scrolling. It doesn't involve anything with a device in their hands. In fact, everything you've talked about occupies their hands in a very different way. It's a very tactile. They have to engage because they don't have the phone in their hands. They have River. They have a puzzle. If they're doing something with their hands, it frees all of a sudden they can give their attention to the person that's standing across from them rather than feeling the pull of the screen.
Right. And sometimes it just, they get a calm in the library. It is a lovely place to be. I mean, I've been working really hard to make it as best as it could be. It's an older school, and I'm there. This is my 9th year there. And every year I just keep trying to make it better. And that's what happens. They relax, they're petting River, and then stuff bubbles up for them, and then they're able to move on to what they had to do. This is something I'm very proud of. I'm very proud of what we've got going on in that media center. I have a fabulous clerk. I have fantastic students who help me. They're in my class. They're student volunteers. It's not just me. There's a lot that makes it happen, and I'm very proud to be part of it. And I feel that there's a lot of other, media specialists out there who would do some of this if they knew about it. So hopefully somebody will try something and give us a call and get more information about it.
Absolutely. Friends, we're going to be putting a bunch of links in the show notes. Diana, you're wonderfully generous, and I appreciate, on behalf of a very grateful listening audience, for being as available to share this experience, because truly I feel like you have managed to overcome something rather than let it take over. And you have come out victorious. You've managed to lift the student body and your colleagues along with you in your recovery in this aftermath. And I'm so grateful. I can't tell you how lucky I feel to have been able to connect with you today and press record. If there are people who would like to add you to their PLN, could you give us an idea of your preferred social media? Where might we find you?
The easiest one is Joyous Librarian, because I try to have that across. And just remembering my name, D. Haneski, just the letter D with the last name Haneski, Haneski. Those are the best ways. I do things like on Wakelet. I don't know if you've used Wakelet. So like for teachers, I'll create that for my own staff, but also I've been involved in, things for the country, and we share it. So that those are resources that I could share as well. So they should look for me on Wakelet as well.
Perfect. And we'll include a link in the show notes. You are amazing. I am so grateful. I love, thank you for sharing some pictures of River, because he's absolute love. I'm so excited for you to have this couple days in Baltimore, connecting with other librarians, and most importantly, being celebrated for all that you've done. Friends, I also wanted to mention, Diana also has received the Lemony Snicket Prize for Noble Librarians Who Face Adversity. For all the aforementioned reasons, I can't think of anybody more deserving, especially when you consider all that not all that you did, but all that you have done, like all that you've done in the wake of experiencing what you did. You came back with a vengeance.
Thank you. It's taken a while. It doesn't happen overnight. I have to make sure people know that. Like when you're down, and it takes a while to get back up. So make sure you're giving yourself grace, you're giving yourself time, and you're being realistic, because I'm very guilty of being hard on myself and, not being realistic. So I'm trying. It's a work in progress. But the ALA Lemony Snicket Award I shared with Yvonne Check from Sandy Hook. Yeah. And I feel like this one is wonderful that, I'm one of 10, but I'm one of 3 school librarians. And, like I said, I think we represent a lot of people, more than the 10,
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're going to be celebrated this weekend. Diana, thank you so much for joining us. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Amy, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Friends, I think you'll agree that it speaks a great deal of Diana's courage and her generous spirit that she joined us today for this conversation. I know selfishly that all of us benefit when she has been able to share not only how she managed to navigate the challenge of being in a situation such as she was, but also then to make sure that she was able to pass along the lessons learned that she could take away from that, and to show us a path towards healing. I am grateful to her, and I applaud her courage, because it truly was an opportunity for us to make sure that a significant audience was able to benefit from the experiences that she had. Friends, if you found this episode helpful today, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider sending a message to Diana, or perhaps leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. One last friendly reminder, use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more, and librarians who book their very first Literati Book Fair and mention the code UNITED when booking may qualify to receive a $500 gift card to Titlewave. Use the link in today's show notes and call the Literati team to see if you qualify. The topic of our next episode will be Hills I'll Die On. I'll be sharing listener feedback and my conversation with Kelsey Bogan. I hope you will tune in.